so you can see how it's snapping to a grid. So this is extremely useful if you are creating something where you need an element to snap to a particular area on a page. So if you're creating a web application that requires this, it's an extremely effective way of actually snapping to particular areas on a grid. So that's another option there. Now let's just pull this down and refresh. I'm going to remove this grid option now, and we're going to go on to look at revert. Now revert is not really something you would include with your dragging. It would only be something you'd want if you wanted the element itself to revert back to a particular position. So revert we can set to true, and what this will do is wherever the element has started, let's just get rid of that there, sorry. Okay, so wherever the element has started, I'm continuing to drag it. However, when I release it, you can see it returns to its original position. So wherever I drag it to, it snaps and reverts back to its original position. And we also have an additional parameter that we can set for this, and this is revert duration, and we can set a time in milliseconds how long this takes to revert back to its original position. So I've set revert duration. Now if I drag, you can see it takes that was a second to revert back. If I was to say change this to 5 seconds, you can see that it's significantly slower. It takes 5 seconds to revert back to its original position. So that's the revert option, and then the revert duration option that allows you to set the speed. However, I tend to find that the revert set to true by its default speed is a nice speed for it to revert back to. I think it's probably 500 milliseconds by default. Okay, so now that we've looked at a few options in here, we're going to take a look at events. Now events can be appended as normal onto the end of here. And then we create a function inside of these to perform a specific action. So for example, I want to, I'm going to comma separate the last option that I've chosen, and I'm then going to type the start option. Now the start option is going to be equal to a callback function. Now what this is going to do is when the dragging has started, it's going to perform the block of code inside of this function. So I'm just going to pull that down a minute, as well as pulling down start as well, just so we can see what's going on a lot better. So as well as these options here, I've chosen this start event. Now it's important to know that this isn't classed as an option. These here are options, and this here is an event. The event has a callback function, and inside of the callback function we can specify something to do. So what we're going to do is, as soon as the dragging starts, we're going to apply some text to a div down here, and it's going to tell us the status of the element. So has it started dragging? Is the element currently being dragged, and when the dragging has stopped as well? So we're going to look at these 3 events, the first of which being start. So we've created this div here, and I'm just going to call it event. And when the element starts to be dragged, so i.e. when it's clicked and the first action is made, we want to put some text inside this event div. So I'm going to say event.text, and inside here, dragging started. So now what's going to happen is when we drag, you can see that the div now says dragging started. Okay, so as soon as we start dragging, or we activate this, i.e. we click on it, that's when the dragging has started. So when I click and pull it a tiny bit of the way, it says dragging started. The other elements are drag and stop. So the first one we're going to look at, or the second one we're going to look at in this case, is let's see, where are we? So that ends just there, and then after this we want to say come down here, and we're going to say drag, and this is equal to a function. We're going to pull this down as well just to make it look a bit neater. So while the element is being dragged, we want to again place some text inside this event div, and this text is dragging. So you'll notice now that when we drag it, we won't actually see the dragging started message here, and that's because this will override this text in this event div. When the dragging started, yes, we will get a message saying dragging started inside of this div, the text inside of this div. However, as we drag, this will replace it. So you'll notice that we won't see the dragging started text, but we will automatically see the dragging text. When I let go, this doesn't actually change because we need to supply an additional event. This additional event is stop. So we create a new callback function inside here, and we pull this down, and inside here we are going to set the event text to dragging stopped. So now that the dragging has stopped, well, when the dragging has started, we have this dragging text here. I'm still dragging this element. However, when I let go and it returns, we have dragging stopped. So with this, you can work out if an element is being dragged or not. Now this might be useful if you wanted to, say, pinpoint the coordinates or find out when an element had been dragged, if you wanted to log this in one way or another. So these events aren't just here for the sake of telling the user when the dragging has started, when the dragging is commencing, or when the dragging is, or the element's being dragged, or when the element has, or dragging has stopped. But we obviously have make use of callback functions in order to do something when the dragging has started. So for example, if you wanted to allow an element to be dragged, and you wanted to, say, change something on a page as it's being dragged, or change something on a page when the dragging has stopped, you can use these events here and the callback functions associated with them. So let's just pull that down there. So the three events we have are start, drag, and stop. Now, as well as these, there are other properties of this draggable interaction we can use. If you go over to the jQuery documentation itself, you can view a list of options, events, and also different methods associated with this draggable functionality. So in the tutorial, we've looked at a variety of options which either help the functionality of draggable or the aesthetics behind it. And we've also looked at some of these events and placing text inside of a div when these events actually happen. So Draggable is an extremely powerful tool, and there's a variety of options you can apply to it depending on your needs.